Dialogic Disciple is an invitation to explore discipleship in dialogue with the world as disciples of the Word.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Dialogic Disciple podcast. My name is James, and I'm here with my co-host,
Elizabeth Shavey.
Elizabeth. We have a special guest here in the studio today, maybe our number one listener. Of our 4 listeners, this guy might be our most faithful listener, Glen Warren. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's great to have you here. We have you are the one who hounds us when we miss an episode, when we're getting a little behind in our recording. You're the first guy that shows up and says, "Hey, where's another episode of that?"
It was like a summer of the drought.
That's right.
You know?
We took the summer off.
Yeah, you took the summer off, and no, seriously though, my commute is better when I have a podcast to listen to.
Yeah,
I have about a 30-minute commute.
Well, now
day.
you can listen to yourself.
Now you can listen to yourself.
Well,
So, Glenn, you were telling us right before we started recording that you used to be in radio. Do you
I
wanna
did.
Share some of that experience.
Yeah. So I graduated from Auburn University.
Oh, man. That's a lot of listeners going to like that.
Yeah. In 2008, and started in January of 2009 as a producer for Sports Radio 790 The Zone.
Yeah.
I was the midday producer. I started off as an intern.
Okay.
For the midday show. Each show, the morning, the midday, and the afternoon, has their own set of staff.
Okay.
And I was the intern for the midday show, a show named Brandon and Wolvie. I don't know if you. It was
how long ago was that?
It was Jeff Wolverton and Brandon Adams were the 2 hosts.
Okay.
This was from 2009 to 2012 or 11.
Yeah. Okay.
And then they left the station, and I got promoted to be the producer. I was no longer an intern. I was a producer for the new midday show, which was Barnhart and Durham.
Okay.
Which was Wes Durham and Tony Barnhart.
Yeah.
And I was their producer for 3 years.
Okay.
And then after they left, I did the morning show.
Okay.
Which was interesting. Having to be in the office at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Wow.
Was in the office at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Early.
That's what time we're recording right now. People don't know, but it is 5:02 a.m. right now.
That's right. That's right. But my favorite part was doing the midday show with Tony Barnhart. And Wes Durham.
That's awesome.
They gave me a nickname. Did you ever listen to the show?
I did. Man, it's been so long ago now.
It was.
I probably heard you on air.
I was on the air.
Yeah.
Mainly it was my life that was on the air.
Yeah.
Because as a sports radio producer, you have to have very thick skin because they will
get picked on a lot.
Call you names.
Yeah.
They will just make up stuff.
You're just the guy behind the glass.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. If you listen to sports radio, that's how it is all over the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so my nickname was Big Game Glenny Warren, and they would just call me Big Game because one day in a pre-show meeting we just had, they were asking me because they knew I went to Auburn. They were asking me, "Are you going to the game this weekend?" And I said, "No, I'm not going," because Auburn was playing Southwestern State, nobody.
Yeah, right.
School. And
some high school in Kentucky.
Right. And then and they said, "Oh, well, you're going next week?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I'm going. They're playing LSU."
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, so you only go to the big games?"
And
I said, "Well, yeah." And so that's where it came
there you
from.
go. That's awesome.
And then I got married at the time, so they were asking me all about my wedding. Like, it was all over Atlanta airwaves about what I was doing or not doing, preparation for my wedding. It was.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It was quite the You've got to have thick skin. My first, when I was on the morning show, it was with Steak Shapiro, who's still on the radio at 680 The Fan.
Yeah.
Nick Cellini, who's on 680 The Fan, and Chris Samina, who's also on 680 The Fan.
I listen to them all the time.
And they gave me the nickname of Leave It to Beaver.
Because you're just so wholesome and pure.
Well, whatever. So you've got
There's a story there.
You've got to have thick skin.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's funny about that is that I listen to sports radio quite a bit here on my commute, right? And they always are making fun of or picking on or talking to the producers, and it never occurred to me that those are real people and that
we
and
are.
that they have real lives and real feelings. I guess I'll never
That's
listen
right.
quite the same way. So, Glenn, we're not here to talk about sports today, but we are here to talk about I guess a variety of different things. I want to start by talking about you. You've shared now a little bit of your history, but you have been part of Northside Church for quite some time, as I recall.
Exactly.
What we call a legacy member, maybe.
What does that mean?
It means like you've been here since the beginning, right?
Since I was coming out of the womb.
You were born a Northside
That's
member.
right. I was baptized here.
Yeah.
My dad was baptized here.
Wow. Okay.
My grandparents, I think this is right, were founding members.
Okay.
Do you know when either one of y'all know
1950?
Yeah.
1950?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were, I think,
Okay.
in that.
So your family goes way back here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got some
yeah.
deep roots.
And
they let you go to Auburn.
Both my parents went.
Oh, well, that explains.
Both my parents went.
Well,
yeah.
there you go. Then this is a legacy of betrayal for the Georgia fans here.
Oh.
Well,
But Glenn, anyway, tell us about your experience growing up here at Northside.
Oh, it was a great place to grow up at church. I was in the choir. They used to call it. Now they call it cherub choir.
Yeah.
Which is my 5-year-old is in.
Yeah.
And my 8-year-old was in, and they're both in the children's choir. Back then, it was like the Joy Choir. They had different names for it.
Yeah.
Do you remember Mike Moffitt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, do both y'all know him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so he was running the choir when I was yay high.
Yeah.
And went through the choir, did youth group. I was like president of the youth group. Nate Juvenile was the youth minister.
First tour.
Yeah. First tour.
First
at
tour.
Northside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
first. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, he can tell you some stories.
Yeah, he can.
And then went off to college, and then came back and got heavily involved with Todd Baker, because at the time he was running the what did he call
Todd?
it? The young
adult ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And my wife and I, we got married at the time, and then so we were on his I don't know, remember what he called it, the young adult board or his committee.
Yeah.
Helping him run, helping him do the
That's
young adult
awesome.
ministry.
Yeah.
And then he left, and then so now we go to Catherine's class.
Yeah.
Every Sunday. It's great.
That's awesome.
We did your Manna Flakes class.
Yeah.
In the summer,
It's
which
great
was
to have
awesome.
you guys there. Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's been a great place to grow up, and we did a little. My wife and I did a little bit of church shopping back when we first got married.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to just be open to. I didn't want her to think, because she grew up Methodist in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
And which is another reason why I remember when we were dating, and she told me, "Oh, I'm Methodist." I thought, file that away. That's good.
That's important information.
That's good. And I didn't want to just automatically just go back here by default necessarily. And but when I remember when she came here, she was like, "It's a wrap."
That's perfect.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I was going to ask, because I mean, that's pretty powerful for you to grow up in a church, go to college, and then come back to the same church. Most people do not have that story. That's pretty incredible. So obviously your wife had a part in that, and saying kind of confirm that this was the place to be.
She did. I've learned that if she confirms something like that, it's in my best interest to get on
That's
board
wisdom
with it.
right there. That is wisdom.
I've been married gosh, going on 12 years now.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, but yeah, so we've done that, and there's actually a few other folks, not many, that I grew up with here that have now come back and have children in the choir and
Excellent,
and all that sort of thing.
Did you grow up with Bailey Quintrell?
Yes, he's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of them. Bailey was a year behind me, but we were
Shout out
close.
to Bailey. I know he's a listener.
That's right. That's right. He's heavily involved in the church too.
Yeah, he is.
Does everything.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife Marianne they're awesome.
They are fantastic people.
And yeah, so there's a handful of people. It started with Todd Baker.
Yeah.
We had a small group that he sort of formulated, and we call it our supper club. And we meet once a quarter, and we usually meet at someone's house, and whoever's hosting it makes the entree, and then each couple brings
That's awesome.
side dish.
How long you guys been meeting together now?
Since Todd was here,
Yeah,
and that
so
was probably, I mean, he set it up, so that was probably 2013.
Yeah, wow.
2012. I mean, at least 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
And we've been meeting, and it's off obviously at someone's house, and I mean, we really don't do any kind of spiritual.
Well, eating together, fellowshipping together,
Yeah,
is spiritual.
totally.
That's one of the things
True.
One of the things that people often overlook with being Christian is just getting together with other Christians is fellowship, is spiritual.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't discount the spirituality.
Well, thank you.
Of
Yeah,
your dinner groups.
And so in that dinner group, there is Bailey. And do you know Jennifer Bon Jovi? Her maiden name is Bickerstaff.
I know John Bon Jovi, but that may not be related.
I think she'll tell you that she's related to him.
Bon Jovi can't be that like.
Anyway, they come to their children are in the children's choir. They come to Wednesday night supper.
Awesome.
Anyway, she grew up here with me.
Okay.
And then off the top of my head, there's probably a few more I could think about.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's kind of rare because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this day and age, like a lot of people my age, they graduate from college and they go to like what's the hip church? Like not the Northside's not hip.
Come on now, whoa!
You are talking about Northside Church. Yes, we are.
Buckhead Church. Buckhead Church.
Buckhead Church
those are
or
cool
Passion City.
Thank you.
Yes, that one. Yep.
And then we were just talking about it. Caroline and I were talking about it. Not someone that grew up here, but someone that was in our Sunday school class recently left, I think, and they were going to Kairos.
Yeah.
What's the...
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
but teacher's own is all
teacher's
good.
Teacher's own, yeah. Well, so first of all, yeah, that is amazing that that not only have you guys come back, but it seems like you got like a little core group of people you grew up with, and you're kind of just sharing life together, growing up in the church together. That's amazing. I'm curious though, having been here since the day you were born, and now having come back, what's it like to see your kids grow up here at Northside?
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's absolutely amazing. They love children's ministry.
Mm-hmm.
They, I mean, it's fantastic. We had the last Friday they did the tacos and tailgates event on Friday night, and I volunteered to be a chaperone. And they did this game called Stuff It that Reverend Sarah came up with.
Yeah,
where two children one stands right behind the other one, and the one behind has to close their eyes, blindfold.
Okay.
And can't see, and there's a table full of taco supplies in front of them, and the person in front can't use their hands but can tell the person behind them what they should grab.
Yeah.
And so then the person behind using their hands while blindfolded is trying to make this taco, and then puts it together, and then stuffs it in the person's, like, they try to eat it. And she thought that was the coolest thing ever.
That sounds fun.
Creativity.
That would work with any age group, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
She wants us to do it at home.
There you go. Family activity. I like it.
So that's an example of they love children's ministry.
When you think back on your experience at Northside, as a kid, do you see a lot of parallels? Like, do you see a lot of shared experience there? I mean, do you think she's having the same experience? Do you think it's
so far?
Yeah.
I mean, just to be able to get together with kids that are in your same age bracket, that and if us as parents, we all have the same sort of belief system and want to instill that in our children.
Absolutely,
And so much so, and this goes to Dr. Bill's, I say preaching, but he's been not necessarily preaching about it, but he's been harping on having children in even the traditional services.
Yes.
And, if they're squirming around, if they're making noise, it's
okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So we typically do 11:15, and my daughter will, she knows when and she's 8. She knows when the offering plate comes by. She brings her wallet, and we'll put $1 or so in there.
Oh, that's awesome.
She can sort of say a little bit of the Apostles' Creed, like she just kind of knows, she knows the cadence and the tone, and she can kind of, and so just even things like that they're absorbing, through children's ministry, through being here, I think is awesome, and so I do see a lot of parallels.
That move that we made just a few years ago now to make sure that kids are in worship with us, I think is one of the best moves that we've made as a church recently, in the sense that, like, your daughter is picking up habits and practices and awareness of things that she wouldn't necessarily get. Not that children's church and things like that aren't important and can't be transformative, but just the laying that foundation at such an early age. I know that's how I grew up. Like, I grew up being in the service, and that's kind of how I was formed as a person. I'm the kid who invented the turn around and get down on your knees and draw on the pew kind of thing, you know. Even though I was not really paying attention, I was absorbing it. Yeah.
I was thinking about that today as I was driving. I was listening to a hymn, and it was a hymn that I grew up just loving. I grew up in the Episcopal Church, and I was listening to the lyrics, and I'm singing along, and the words of this hymn are ingrained in my head. Yeah. So much so that, you know, I don't even pay attention to them, right? But I grew up singing this hymn, and as I was reflecting on them, I'm like, wow, this the language and the richness. Yeah. But again, that was ingrained in me from, you know, being knee-high to a grasshopper in the church. Mm-hmm. And what a gift, you know, to be able to rediscover all these things that you get from growing up in the church with that language and that theology, and it just opens up a whole world.
Yeah. The music in particular, I think, that's the thing that sticks with me. We get so much of our theology and faith formation from the hymns that we sing and the music that we listen to. It can be 20, 30 years later, and you'll remember a song that you heard, you know, when you were a kid.
Absolutely.
And it restores your faith. It re-enlivens your faith or something like that. You know, like I'm not sure what the language is, but that is just something that you can't. Once you miss that opportunity, you can't go back and put that in there, and that's
and even the contemporary service.
Yeah,
I call it groovy church. You know,
we're not allowed to call it that, Glenn. Now
they love going to when we have something going on in the afternoon and we need to go earlier.
Yeah,
we go to the contemporary service, and they love that kind of music too.
Yeah,
and Mr. Matt, you know, and all the. I mean, they still will sing to just themselves. They'll be walking around the house singing the VBS theme song. That he was up there playing. I don't know if
they loved that. He's a hit at VBS.
Oh yes, he's a celebrity in our house.
Yeah, he's a celebrity here at Northside as well. Well, that's awesome, man. You know, I'm kind of envious. I'm jealous of your faith experience as far as worship goes, because you're getting to live out something that that really over the past 100 years the church has moved away from, which is that you're growing up in the same church and staying at the same church, which was the way it was. You know, 100 years ago, that's how it was for everybody for the first, 1900 years of the church. And now people are so scattered about the world. You know, you leave home, you don't typically go back. And so I'm jealous. I'm envious of your experience. It's amazing.
Well, it's a great place to come back to.
Yeah.
I mean, Northside has changed a lot over the years, but it's also the same. I mean, the same community, same great people.
Yeah.
It's great.
So, but apparently just not cool. Right? Is that not hip? Is that what the word you said?
No, it's very, very hip. We're hip. I mean,
hip to be square. Hip to be square.
Do those other churches have a podcast?
Hey, who even knows? Well, you came back to Northside, and I think immediately we've put you to work. You are serving on the finance committee right now as the chair of the finance committee. You have served in the past as a stewardship head, chair. Okay,
I still am.
You still are the stewardship chair.
I think as far as Ken is. Ken hasn't released me yet.
Okay, so he's still down in that dungeon.
Yeah,
do more stewardship.
That's right.
So, what does it mean for you to come back and be able to serve the church that you grew up in? I mean, like, what does it mean for you to be able to what am I trying to ask here? What's it like, man? What's it like to be the director of finance or the finance chair?
It's great. I mean, the cool thing about it is to be able to talk about. So I do this for a living. I work for Woodward Academy. I'm the leadership and legacy giving officer.
Okay.
So a few years ago, Nick asked me if I would chair the stewardship campaign.
Now, you're talking about Nick Houston, who used to be the co-host of this particular program. He is he's officially dead to us. So we may he rest in peace.
No, we love you, Nick.
No, just kidding. Love you, Nick. Anyway, so Nick came to
traitor.
you.
Yeah. So he asked me to be the stewardship chair, and I said I'd do it. And first I was the vice chair, and then I've been the chair for I think 2 years now.
Okay.
I think 3 years now. And it's great. I mean, I get to talk to folks about the importance of giving back to your church, tithing.
Yeah.
Which I think, gets into, there's scripture about 10% of your of your income.
Uh-huh.
But I also think tithing can be, time, talent, and treasure.
Yes.
So like you could tithe in the sense of volunteering at children's ministry.
Yeah.
Or volunteering at one of Reverend House's mission
Yes.
places.
Yeah.
My wife and children are doing it. I think, is it tonight actually? The Peace Prep, I think.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I did hear Angela say that on her way out the door. Yeah. Yep. She was going over there.
To do that. So anyway,
and that's just as valuable. I mean, that's something else that people don't often think about is that, we talked about this a few years ago, trying to put on our pledge cards that we give out here at Northside, putting not just a pledge of financial giving, but also of time, of the time that you'll spend volunteering or serving or doing whatever at Northside, because that's really, at the end of the day, time is a more valuable resource than any amount of money can be, as we all know. And the time that people give to Northside as in service is we couldn't do what we do if people didn't do that,
Yeah, and I first learned that through Metro Atlanta Project as a youth.
Yeah, okay.
We did MAP.
Yeah,
we MAP graduates.
Right, get that.
Yeah. Right, and that was back in the day when we would do roofing. Have y'all heard?
Yes.
I've heard stories.
Yes.
And we'd be in, on these roofs in the middle of July, hammering nails and shingles and everything, and talking about giving back to your community. I mean, so that's where for me it really started there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I definitely think Nick got the right guy, though, because I've never heard anybody light up and get excited about talking to people about tithing.
Right?
Like usually it's like, okay, I've got to go talk to these people about stewardship and tithing. It's an exciting thing if you really know what it's about. But very rarely do I see someone whose eyes light up and is like, I get to go and talk to people about tithing and stewardship.
Yeah. Well, I think you hit on it. It's it's not just writing a check. It's so much more than that. It's the meaningful experience that you get from sweating on a rooftop during MAP. That, it's those connection things that make all the difference in the world. That's stewardship to me.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this church is very, very blessed. We have a lot of resources that and programming that we're able to provide because of the tithing, because of the generosity of this church. But in order to be able to do what we can do, we need that, every year. I mean, we need, people may look at the nice buildings, nice facilities we have, and they are, but we have to continue to have that tithe every year to keep up the programming that we have. And that's what I just encourage people to think about when they're sitting down and making their, as far as writing a check goes. But there's also other ways that you can serve and.
So I don't know a lot about what it looks like to be on finance or stewardship committees. Do you guys get to do any visioning? Like, what do you want to see of Northside in its future? Like, what do you think about when you have these conversations? Do you get to do any of that?
Well, we have revamped the stewardship campaign a little bit this year. Yeah, I'm sure y'all are very aware, and our listeners should be aware too, that it used to be just October,
right?
Was just the month of October, and it'd be 4 weeks in October, and each sermon would revolve around then. But now revolve around stewardship. But now it's going to be, I think, from now until through the first of the year. Yeah. And every so often, a different member of the congregation or a member of staff is going to do a little moment about stewardship. I think a couple weeks ago it was Kelly Stonis that did it. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to kind of draw it out a little bit longer rather than just on October to hopefully, because we did have a little bit of a dip last year in our monetary tithing. And there's a lot of factors for that. I mean, the
coming out of the
pandemic and then, what's the world going to look like and next
the
year
UMC,
with the future of the denomination, and all the things. I mean, so it's not necessarily I would think a lot of churches are dealing with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have done that to change a little bit, but more than beyond that, it's really not a whole lot of vision or any kind of long term. Unless you're talking about a capital campaign where you're going to build a building, where you're going to do some.
Well,
big renovation.
Let's give you the opportunity, Glenn. Like, if it seems like you're deep in the Northside. Doesn't sound like you're going to go anywhere anytime soon. Your kids are growing up here. Like, what do you want to see out of Northside? And when people are sitting down to write their checks or they're thinking about how they're going to spend their time at Northside, people are thinking about, what is this church going to look like in 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years, how old are you? Can I ask you how old you are?
38.
So you're 38 years old. You've been a part of this church really since you were born. So, what's it going to look like in 38 years from now? Like, tell me, like, what do you kind of see? What is your vision?
Well, I would say presently, I think we have got every aspect of the church doing great, running really well, humming at a good pace, going strong. If we could just figure out the youth piece.
Yeah.
I think that's really
huge.
the missing piece.
Yeah.
Because it's the young people that are going to, run the church.
You're a
later
testament
on.
to
And,
that.
yeah. And,
Right.
well,
Yeah.
and that's where, the formative years of, and I think, what did I read recently that something crazy like 90% of Christians make their commitment to become a Christian and commit their life to Christ in a youth setting,
That wouldn't surprise me.
in sort of
That
in
sounds
that
right.
Yeah.
that time of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true for me.
That was true for me. Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
true for me.
Yeah.
3 for 3.
There
right
we
There we go. So
Um,
100% in this room.
Yeah. So I think that's so important, but I have no doubt that we'll get there.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time, and God has a plan, and
And that's really the thing. You got to kind of lean into that, right? The design, the plan that God has. Youth ministry. I used to do youth ministry. I did student ministries for probably about 10 years, from the time I was like 21 till I was like 31, and I love it. It's fantastic. It is the hardest job in the church, as far as I can tell, as far as I know, because you're dealing with kids who are erratic. And kids, just kids. You're dealing with teenagers, and once teenagers become teenagers, they become sometimes terrible people, sometimes great people, but they have a little bit of a transition going on there.
Yep.
And wrestling with them, and then wrestling with parents too. Sometimes you got the most unreliable people in the church as far as teenagers go. And then you're trying to figure out how to get them here, how to get them to stay here, and that's
keeping
what
them engaged.
you keep
Yeah.
them engaged,
Yeah.
right? And like you said, it's such an important time in our life where we're making commitments, we're making decisions about who we are. But all that to say that I did it for about 10 years. It's an incredibly rewarding job, and I know that Northside will find the right person to plug into there. And I'm looking forward to that. I with everything's ready to go. You just need that person to plug in.
Yeah.
I'm excited about what God's going to do with that.
You've got. Oh, how old are your children, Glenn? Because they're
I had an 8-year-old just turned last week, 8,
okay.
and then just yesterday, 5-year-old.
Oh, well,
So
happy
we
birthday!
have 2 September birthdays.
Okay.
That's
The
perfect
9th
ages.
and the 18th. So we had a construction birthday cake last night at the house for the 5-year-old.
Nice.
What does that look like?
It was a Publix cake with an excavator and a dump truck on top of it.
It's amazing.
Fantastic.
It sounds like a Publix commercial. I don't know if you've
Right?
seen those on TV.
One of those, like,
Right.
family picturesque sort of things.
It was. Exactly right. Yeah.
Aw.
Those are
That's
perfect ages. Glenn, I have a long-standing. I have a daughter who's 8 years old too. She
Yeah.
just turned 8 in
Yeah.
in June.
I think she's in the same class
I think so too.
with Ansley, my 8-year-old.
Yeah. I
Anyway.
think they. But I have a theory, a long-standing theory, that 8 is the perfect age. 8 is like the last time that you actually are who you are before like puberty hits and you're like everything gets messed up in your head. But like who you are at 8 is who you actually are deep inside. What do you think about that theory?
Well, I was hoping that it would be longer than 8.
You can get back to it.
But yeah. It's interesting you say that because my wife and I have talked about, in this world we live in, protecting the innocence of our children.
Mm-hmm.
To a certain point. I mean,
Sure.
obviously, they need to go out on their own eventually,
Yeah.
and do their thing. But I think that's important to as long as you can keep them
Yeah.
under your wing, so to speak.
Right,
And
yeah.
so, but as they get older, like you said, they become their own individual,
Yeah.
which is a great thing, but also
Also
for
terrifying.
a parent, it's very terrifying.
Yeah.
I agree.
Have your kids had any faith struggles or anything, or do they bring those kind of conversations home at all?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. The only thing is, this isn't a struggle, but just something that we've had to sort of work through is occasionally with my, just as of yesterday, 5-year-old Trip. He's my son. When we do our nightly prayers at night, I usually do the prayer, and I'll say, would you like to pray for anything? And he'll say something like, I would like to pray for a puppy dog. I would like to pray for, and I would, he was on this thing about a chicken coop with some chickens in the backyard.
I'm tracking. I'm
like, okay, they're not wishes.
You're right.
Like, we're not writing a letter to Santa.
This isn't a genie, So we've had to kind of explain that.
Yeah.
And talk through that. But I think back to your question about are they experiencing the same thing I experienced when I was their age at Northside. For me, I remember thinking, not that I didn't have questions as I got older and things that you wrestle with in your head, but it was such a way of life. Come into church every Sunday, doing youth group, NYF on Sunday night, Wednesday night supper. I didn't really, it was kind of just what we did.
Yeah.
And so, at least at this stage, I think they're probably feeling the same thing.
Sure.
This is what we do. So I don't think they've gotten to the point where they're, asking me, what is the meaning of life, or
well, in a sense, that's kind of what childhood is about. And you're laying a foundation. Of course, they're just kind of absorbing right now, and they're not having those challenging questions that they will. And when they do, having that foundation to kind of go back to, the Bible says, what does it say? Train your child up in the way of the Lord, and they shall never depart from it. Now they're going to in their 20s for sure when they go to college, but they'll come back, right? That's one of the things that, speaking of youth ministry, one of the things that I constantly ran into is I had parents who'd come to me, and I'm sure that children's ministers run into this too, but parents would come to me and be like, what are you going to do to make sure that my kid grows up in the faith? And I looked at them and said, look, we're going to have a lot of fun together, and I'm going to teach them from the Bible. And they're going to have a few experiences that they're going to remember. They're going to be powerful for them. But they're going to learn faith from you. Like, whatever you model for them, that's what they're going to come back to when they're older. Because more often than not, there are exceptions, but more often than not, kids grow up in the church. Kids who grow up in the church, they oftentimes during college will walk away from the church for a little bit. Even me, I went to college to become a teacher of the Bible. And even I kind of stopped going to church when I was in college, right? It happens. Like you walk away from it, but then when people get married and they have kids and they come back to the church, they're going to try to model the same faith that was modeled for them for the most part. So children's ministry really begins at home. It sounds like you guys have a pretty good grasp on that right now.
Yeah, we think it's so important to model that behavior in front of them and just set a good example.
Yeah.
Because they are sponges. They do absorb everything. And so we totally subscribe to that.
So Ken, our executive director, has been been talking to us as a staff about budgeting, and so every department plans their budget every year, and he's been trying to get us to think about this in a missional way. So, what is the mission of Northside? What are our values at Northside? And make sure that we lead the budget conversation with those questions. So, I'm curious, Glenn, from your perspective, what do you think are the values that drive Northside, and what does that look like to use those values when we budget, when we talk about finances?
Well, I think one of the things, it's funny you say that, because one of the things that Ken had told me in a meeting recently was that he had given the staff, some parameters, a sort of a template to how to do your budget and what he thinks he would like to see accomplished. And he was telling me that he was really pleased with the way the staff took that to heart and really did a great job of setting their budgets for the year, and no department was over budget last time we talked, which is still the case. And so, to take that, I don't want to say instruction or task that he gave y'all, and to think about the overall health and wellness of the entire church rather than just my budget and my, I have to get my programming in and mine this, and think about the totality of the church and how me doing my budget in a certain way can benefit the entire organization. Teamwork makes the dream work, I guess.
Yes, it does.
So he was telling me how pleased he was with that, and I got to report. Cool. I actually got to report that to the finance committee, and then to the executive committee and the church council last time we met. So it was really great. So
Ken does a great job of, and one of the things that I love about Ken since he's been here, he does a great job of reminding us why we're here and what we're doing. And for somebody that's in his position, it's not necessarily rare, but it's not something you expect. It's, someone who's head up is overseeing the finances and stuff like that. It's generally about the bottom line before anything. But he really does a great job of when we do have to cut back, or when we do have to shift funds, or when we do have to think about budgets in a way that we're not used to thinking about them. He does a great job of reminding us that we're doing it all really to glorify God at the end of the day and to do the work of the church. And he is constantly and consistently reminding us of that. And I think not just us, but through us, maybe the congregation as well.
Yeah, and I think that was part of his stewardship approach this year, is trying to communicate how we connect those numbers to the mission. And that kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about it's not just writing a check, it's the experience of community, of relationship. It all is rolled into this experience of what it means to be a good steward of what God has given you. So it's not just you alone with your budget, your checkbook, you're part of a community. And so how do you illustrate that through your actions?
And honestly, that trickles down to individual members and families of the church too, when they're doing their budget, right? They're doing their family budget. Like, how am I going to contribute to Northside? Thinking about it not as just what am I giving, but how am I participating in the life of Northside Church and that commitment that me and my family want to make to Northside Church.
Right, exactly. And that commitment, while we need the checks, and the finances.
yes.
Spoken like a good
that's right. That's
finance
right.
chair.
Ken would be upset if I didn't with me.
Nobody gave anything this year, but everyone's volunteered.
We have great volunteers.
Northside UMC /commitment.
You can do it online. You can give us a check. You can
text to give.
I don't know if do we have Venmo?
We can set one up.
We should. But you're right. It comes in many forms, and I think it's very important to remember that that tithing is not just strictly cash.
Right.
And as a family, yes, you have to think about, to your point, you have to think about what are we going to do to be involved in the church with our time, our talent, and our treasure.
Yeah.
Those are 3 things we talk about at work,
I love
where
that.
I work.
That's good.
And it applies here.
And one of the other things too that I think gets highlighted mostly during stewardship season, but one of the things that I constantly come back to in my own mind is when you give to a church, when we think about actual financial giving, and volunteering and stuff like that too, serving, it's different than the other kinds of giving that we do. Like because we have a people here at Northside who are incredibly generous people, and they're generous than more than just at Northside. They're generous to other organizations, other social organizations, other people, probably to football teams and everything else, right? We have people who like to give. But when you give to the church, when you give to any church, but when you give here at Northside Church, it's not just about a gift, an offering. It is a commitment to the kingdom that we are building together. It is a commitment to a thing that's been happening now for 2,000 years. That is a gift that God takes and really makes into something way more than it ever could have been by itself, and that blessing
multiplies
that it multiplies it. Hey,
ding,
how about
ding,
that?
ding. That's our stewardship theme this year.
Go forth and multiply.
Right, and that's right. I should say I have to give my lovely bride the credit for this point. Is she said to me, Dr. Bill preached on multiply last Sunday, and that applies to stewardship. Where your gifts to Northside allow us to multiply what we're able to do here. Here at, and then unfortunately, no gifts means subtraction, so we don't want to go that way.
I thought you were gonna say division. I was like, we already got enough of that too.
No.
We'll cut.
I'll say that we've talked about this, that how many churches could sit down and have conversations like we've had at church council.
Oh yeah.
And not get heated, not get and I think that's healthy. It's good.
It really is.
While we might disagree or whatever, I think it's okay.
Yeah.
So
you talked about it too. Just to get into it for a minute, like you talked about it before, Glenn. Like there are many different reasons why giving at churches has declined or why it's not where it used to be. The pandemic is a huge one. But I think a lot of it also is people, particularly Methodist churches, with the thing that's going on right now with our denomination, that of which we do not speak, but we'll talk about it. I think there are some people who are hesitant to give or that are withholding maybe to see what happens or those kinds of things. But what I see at Northside Church is a church that is ready to wrestle with these issues that we have in the denomination, but people who can disagree with one another and still sit in the pew and worship together and still be the church that we were designed and called to be in Jesus Christ in a way that I quite honestly don't see that in a lot of other churches.
Well, that's exactly what I heard out of that last church council meeting that we were at. And that was just beautiful to me. I mean, it was a long meeting. There was a lot said, but the fact that we could all be in a room together and say different things and have different opinions and different points and, come out of it saying, I'll see you on Sunday. I'm going to worship next to you.
Yeah, I think, you asked me earlier, what's Northside going to be like in the next 38 years? In the next 138 years, Northside's still going to be awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, Northside's always going to be a great place to worship and have community no matter what happens with the denomination. I mean, I'm so confident in that no matter what happens, whether it goes, whatever happens, it's going to be, Northside's still going to be Northside.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change. And so, I think it's very interesting that you said that the 2.5 hour meeting was beautiful.
Some of us have other feelings about
Yes.
the content of the meeting was beautiful. The length of the meeting was
the cold supper waiting at home, not so much.
That's right.
Well, that again, I think I can't say this enough. I mean, that's the whole purpose behind this podcast. Why we call it Dialogic Disciples. God loves the dialogue and He loves the debate. He loves the disagreement. Even what He hates is the division. And I think as long as we can come together and remember that we're bound together with one cup, one Lord, one baptism, it doesn't really matter what we think about issues. We love each other, we support one another, and we're in this together. And I love that. And I think you're right. Northside Church embodies that, and that makes it awesome. I think that foundation is solid. So,
amen.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Glenn, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been great to talk.
Fun.
Thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Elizabeth, thank you for being here.
Happy.
And guys,
always.
we will see you next week.
I think based on the ChatGPT show, you cut out my most favorite part of the podcast.
Oh no!
You changed it.
What I cut out?
What do you
The
say?
beginning?
You say my co-host.
Well, we can do that.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's funny. I started calling my wife, "Hello, co-host."